Hey, what's up everybody? It's Mike from Cornfield Customs and welcome back to the Cornfield Customs channel. Today we're going to be following up on making the 51 convertible taillight buckets and getting one fit into the car, hopefully, at least that's our goal. So what we've got here is we have one there, and here's the one we're going to be working with. So it's still just sitting in our fixture. So come out of the fixture to do our hammer forming here around the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk over the car with our bucket, start to figure out how we're going to put it in here. So I haven't really turned all the flanges yet completely. You can see in the last video it's not perfect, but what I want to do is I think I'm going to do this in the car. That way I can put a dolly on the back side and I can kind of hammer everything over to the car. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to drag the TIG welder up here, and I'm going to get this, I'm just going to tack it kind of right there by my thumb because it fits somewhat decent. So I might hammer that over a little bit more and tack it in place, and then I can take a laser level and we'll make sure, like I'm going to eyeball it and get it close, but then we can make sure that it's pretty vertical in the opening based on our mounting holes for our tail light. So I'm going to get that stuff pulled up here, the welder, so we can tack this in, and the laser level set up so we can get everything lined up, and then we can tack it into place and start hammering and dollying around the bucket flange to get it seated up to the quarter panel and looking like it should. Welder is set up, got everything laid over here just to make it easier. I have our laser level here, which is self-leveling, so I don't really have to worry about getting it leveled this way because it's self-leveling. And I've got it lined up on our peak here and then lined up on our peak back here. But it's kind of tough to see, so we'll walk over and we'll turn off some of the lights to get us some really good mood lighting. And then we should be able to see what we're working with. And let's kill, what lights do we want to kill? Yeah, probably these. So that'll work. And I'm gonna have to put you guys on a tripod just so I can kind of have my hands not holding the camera. So let me get the tripod set up. Hopefully I can get it to where you guys can see really well, and we will get this thing kind of set up. All right, so I hope you guys can see pretty well. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get the camera and everything going on and stay out of the way of the laser. So I'm just going to put a reference mark for now, and I'm lining up the edge of our holes because it's not directly in the center, because it would have to, to get this completely where I want. So I'm kind of eyeballing it here, and I'm going to put a reference mark here and here so I know where I want to hold this when I tack it. I'm going to end up blocking the laser, so the reference mark will just help me get it lined up while I tack it at this point. So we'll line our marks up. I'm going to let it kind of fall out at the bottom just so I know that I'm going to tack it, and we'll fuse it. And then when I'm ready, we'll just pull that in like that, and then I can come around and hammer and dolly it. It almost touches here too, so I think at this point, I'm gonna turn the lights back on and get a hammer and dolly, and we'll start to hammer and dolly this in place and tack it in a few more spots to keep it rigid. So put my hat back on so people don't complain about my hair, since that seems to be a talking point for some people out there. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna use what I call a comma dolly, and I can come into the back side here and get that up against the metal of this radius, and then we can hammer that over. It's just going to be kind of tough because there's not There's not a good way to clamp it, so I might do it. I'm going to try it without having a dolly on the back first, just to see if we can knock that over and get it to where we can tack it in another spot so it's not quite so flimsy. So it's not wanting to cooperate, so let me see if I can get a clamp in there, and that will make life a lot easier. All right, so I got a clamp to actually work and pull this down, so then I'm going to come in again, and we're going to fuse tack this here, and then I'm going to start to check the level or squareness of it on this plane to make sure it's not pointed over one direction or the other. So just come in here, and we're going to fuse it. And again, we're just fusing it now to hold it in place while we hammer and dolly around on some stuff. You know, we still might have to cut these tacks loose and move it again, depending on if this is twisted or not. So we'll just kind of sight down it. And sighting on it, it looks pretty close. It might have a little bit of a twist, but the good thing is now it feels pretty solid. So I'm going to come in and hammer and dolly around this using just my standard body hammer and using my standard body hammer and the comma dolly. Like I said, just coming in here and kind of working this edge over and see how it looks. And as things get closer, just like I just said a minute ago, you might have to cut these tacks loose and wiggle it around. But at least now it's relatively solid, and it gives me something to work with to get this radius cleaned up and tied into the quarter panel much better. All right, so I hammered and dollied it out a little bit all the way around and got this a little bit tighter, but we're just running into the issue now of that this is overlapped, this panel is overlapped on this panel, so we're trying to get this area to lay on both. And there's a little bit of a loose edge here. So I'm going to take this back off and I'm going to kick shrink this edge just a little bit to tighten it up. And I'm going to go ahead and mark with our Sharpie this back edge, and then I can trim off any excess. I might even pull the quarter off and cut out more of the old quarter so I can get in there a little bit easier. Because now I'm trying to work in this little hole and it's kind of tough to get my hand and the dolly up in there. So like I said, I might take the outer quarter off and go ahead and just rough cut this out a little bit more under here to give myself a little bit more room to work so I can get that to fit up a lot better. Okay, so I had trimmed out behind the quarter, and while I was at it, I just went ahead and trimmed this back to about here and tacked it. So this is a smooth seam now. I did the same thing over here. That way I'm not dealing with that overlap on top of an overlap on top of an overlap. So then I came in and I clecoed that and realized it was getting hung up in this corner. So I ground a little bit off there and re-drilled the cleco, and that got this squared up pretty nice. So from here, I'm going to go back to hammering and dollying. I did trim out the quarter underneath that you guys could see, so that gave me plenty of room to access to work. So now I can come in, do some more hammer and dolly work, and get this dialed in. I did go over and I was going to tighten up these edges on the kick shrinker a little bit, but being how far it's rolled over, I can't get it into the kick shrinker. So if we have to do any shrinking here at the edge, I'm going to have to do a little bit of tuck shrinking on the car, or maybe a little bit of heat shrinking to get that to pull in. So we'll see how well it goes once I get back to hammering and dollying. So I have the taillight piece mostly bumped over where I want it. There's still a little bit of a gap, but that's going to be due to the fact that it's overlapped still on this piece. So I went ahead and put the taillight in and kind of checking to see how it is. I had the client come over and he likes how it's a little bit recessed here and it's slightly recessed here, almost flush on the outside. So he kind of likes the look of that because it puts the lens almost vertical, and it kind of gives the look of the quarter being nice and flat. So it's pretty straight up and down. It might be angled out just a little bit, but then with the lens kind of dipping in, it gives a little bit of a French look, but flush at the top. So I just kind of did it like that because I thought it would look kind of neat, and he came over and looked at it and he likes it. So that's the route we're going to go. So this is how everything looks. Like I said, it's pretty close, but with it being overlapped, it's still not perfect. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull the light out. We're going to take the bucket area out, and I can weld up the back section of the bucket or the bottom of the bucket to the side and the reverse section, get that all welded and dressed, and then I will mark this and trim it, and we can tack it in. I'm doing it that way because once we get the bucket tacked into the quarter panel, we're not going to be able to get in there as easily to hammer and dolly out the weld seam on the inside. So I'm going to work my way inside out and get that bucket all welded up, and then we can start putting things together, hopefully for the final tacking. But that's kind of my goal, is get that welded up, get the bucket tacked in. Maybe if there's time, I've got today and part of tomorrow to work on this before I have to switch gears, and then finish trimming this, get it tacked. So get all of the sections of the quarter panel final tacked together, ready to go on, and see how it all looks coming together. So stick around as I pull out the bucket and we get it all welded solid. So even though I've given you guys this information a few times in past videos, I'll go ahead and do it again just for you new guys, that this is your first video watching on the channel. So we've got the TIG welder set up. We're gonna run about 58 amps. So we've got 58 amps. We are electrode negative. Got our gas on, and I'll hit the pedal. And we're running about 15 on our flow meter, and this is 100% argon because we're TIG welding. I've got a 1/16 inch tungsten, nice and sharp. And again, that rule to get your amps in the ballpark is 1 amp for every 1/1000th of material thickness. So this is 18 gauge, so right around 50 to 60 thousandths depending on the material. Could be a little thinner, could be a little thicker. 58 gives me plenty of room to adjust on the fly with the foot pedal. So let's get this taillight bucket welded up. While that taillight bucket cools down, I'm gonna take our other bucket that's all tacked together and kind of show you the process of what's going forward. So with it being welded, we have to planish that weld out, get it nice and flat, and finish the bucket out. So usually I would use our Milwaukee air planisher. But the problem with this bucket is it runs in to the bottom of the frame. So I do have a Bailey Industrial air planisher that is bolted to the side of the big hammer here. And I had made this really low profile swan neck years back, and it works really well to get into tight areas like this. I don't even have a bottom tool in it right now, but you can see that it allows me to reach in and planish out right up to that edge. So as soon as that bucket cools down from welding it, I'll grab it and we will go over to the Bailey air planisher and we will planish out that weld seam, get that all wrapped up, and then we can get that taillight bucket tacked in the new quarter. All right, so I have a 36-inch radius lower, a flat top upper, and here is our welded piece. So I'll throw this in here and we will get the air hammer turned on and get to planishing this weld out. So I got everything planished out, and I'm just gonna lightly dress the welds a little bit with a roll-off disc, and then come back over it with a DA, get it all cleaned up, and I'll come inside with like a flap drum just to clean that up as well. It's just easier to clean this up as we go instead of trying to wait to the end when it's all welded together and wrangle around the complete panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this piece up before we final trim and tack it into place. So I'm gonna get to it. All right, so got everything sanded out. I didn't get carried away with metal finishing on it because it is gonna be the inside of the quarter panel. And so, I mean, I didn't spend hours and hours and hours picking and filing. It's not 100% perfect, but should work for inside the quarter panel. And just ran a cone cartridge sanding disc inside here to help clean it up a little bit. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna re-cleco this into place, and then I'll come back with our ultrafine Sharpie, mark our final trim line, and I'll probably leave a couple of these little cleco mounts as tabs just to relocate it. Then I'll trim this out with snips, and we can start final fitting and getting this taillight bucket tacked in. Okay, so I got the top section all tacked in here. And at this point, I don't really want to stand on my head to finish kind of hammering, dollying this into place and tacking it. And it just kind of sucks working on the ground being hunched over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this quarter panel off, and I'm going to take it over to the workbench and work on it there. Make it a little bit easier on myself. And we already know that everything's clecoed together and mostly tacked, so it's going to stay where it needs to be. So I'm going to wrap this video up just so it doesn't drag out too far. We might break this into another section of finishing out this quarter completely, but this video is going to be all wrapped up. So I want to thank you guys for checking out this video, checking out a lot of our other videos. Drop down in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this project. Let me know what you think about this video, some of our others. A lot of great stuff we're working on here in the shop with Dom in the office doing videos and editing. So make sure to let him know how he's doing in the comment section. And yeah, so stick around for future videos. Thank you guys so much for checking it out, and we will catch you on the next one.